In this world full of fame, competition, and talent, there are still stories that touch the soul. Here on this channel, we share true tales of hope, humanity, and miracles that remind us what life is really about. Today's story is one that will stay with you forever. It's about a Filipino veteran named Mang Lito, a man who went from the depths of poverty to the bright lights of America's Got Talent, and how his voice made Simon Cowell shed tears in front of millions. The story begins in a small fishing village near Cebu, Philippines. The sun rises over the sea, casting golden light on the waves, and the smell of salt fills the air. Among the huts built from bamboo and old tin roofs, an elderly man named Mang Lito wakes up before dawn. He's 71 years old, his hair silver, his back slightly bent, but his eyes, they hold a quiet strength that only comes from a life of struggle and survival. Every morning, he walks to the pier with a small net over his shoulder, not to fish for himself but for his neighbors who can't afford food. Mang Lito has lived most of his life in poverty. Once a young soldier who fought during times of unrest, he returned home with medals that couldn't feed his family. His wife, Aling Rosa, passed away a few years ago after a long illness, leaving him alone in a tiny shack by the sea. But every night, he still talks to her picture, whispering stories about his day, promising her that he'll keep helping others just like they used to. Life hasn't been kind to him. Sometimes, he skips meals so the neighborhood children can eat. He fixes old shoes for free. He shares his rice with stray dogs. Yet through it all, there's something inside him that never fades, his love for music. When he was young, his father taught him to sing old Filipino ballads by the fire. Music became his escape, his way to remember hope even when the world seemed cruel. One evening, as the sun sets over the ocean, Mang Lito sits outside his hut holding an old guitar, its strings rusted, its wood chipped. He starts to sing softly, a song about loss and love. His voice, though aged, carries a haunting beauty that drifts across the water. A tourist walking by stops to listen. Tears fill her eyes as she hears the depth of pain and purity in his song. She records a short clip on her phone and posts it online with the caption, "The voice of a forgotten hero." Within days, the video goes viral. People from all over the Philippines start sharing it, calling him, the singing veteran. A local news station visits his village, asking him to perform on camera. When asked why he sings, he smiles and says, "Because singing keeps me alive. And maybe it reminds others that life is still beautiful." That clip reaches millions. One morning, as he sweeps the small space in front of his hut, a young woman arrives with a letter in her hand. She introduces herself as Mia, a producer from America's Got Talent. She tells him that Simon Cowell himself saw his video and wants to invite him to audition in Los Angeles. Mang Lito stands frozen. For a moment, he laughs softly, thinking it's a joke. But when she shows him the official invitation, his eyes widen. He presses his hand against his chest and whispers, "Me. At my age." The whole village gathers to celebrate. They raise money for his flight, bringing coins and small bills in a basket. Children draw handmade signs saying, "Go, Mang Lito." He's never been on a plane before. On the day of his departure, everyone walks him to the pier where a small boat will take him to the city. He looks back at his village, tears rolling down his cheeks, and says, "I'll carry all your prayers with me." When he arrives in Los Angeles, everything feels like another world, the tall buildings, the noise, the lights. But he keeps his composure, carrying his old guitar in a simple cloth bag. Backstage at America's Got Talent, other contestants stare at him curiously. Some smile, some whisper. A few wonder if he's really going to perform. But he just sits quietly in the corner, praying softly and clutching a small photo of his late wife. Finally, his name is called. The stage lights dim. The audience murmurs. The judges look up. Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel are waiting. Mang Lito walks slowly onto the stage, his steps steady but humble. The crowd goes silent. He stands before the microphone, smiling shyly. Simon looks at him and says, "Hello, sir. What's your name?" "My name is Lito," he replies with a slight bow. "People call me Mang Lito in my country." Simon asks gently, "And where are you from?" "I'm from Cebu, Philippines." The audience cheers. Simon continues, "What brings you to America's Got Talent?" He pauses, looking at the crowd. "I came here to sing, not to win, but to thank everyone who still believes in kindness. And to sing for my wife, she's watching me from heaven." The judges fall silent. Simon nods slowly, visibly moved. "Take your time," he says. Mang Lito closes his eyes, grips the microphone, and begins to sing, "You Raise Me Up." His voice trembles at first, old and fragile, but as the music flows, something miraculous happens. The notes rise, full of raw emotion, pain, love, gratitude, and hope. Every word feels like a prayer. The crowd leans forward, captivated. By the second verse, his voice grows stronger. The camera pans to Simon Cowell, his eyes glisten, his hand rests against his lips. Sophia wipes away a tear. By the final note, the entire theater is on its feet. A standing ovation echoes through the hall. When the music stops, Mang Lito lowers the microphone, breathing heavily. He smiles, his eyes shining under the stage lights. Simon stands, walks to the edge of the table, and says softly, "Mang Lito, that was one of the most heartfelt performances I've ever heard in my life." The audience cheers louder. Simon continues, "I felt every word you sang. You reminded me why I love doing this show." Then something incredible happens. Simon presses the golden buzzer. The golden confetti rains down from the ceiling, shimmering around Mang Lito as he looks up in disbelief. The audience screams with joy. Tears roll down his face as he clutches his guitar to his chest. A producer rushes on stage to hug him. Simon walks up, shaking his hand and saying, "You're a hero, sir. You've just changed all our lives tonight." Backstage, the crew hugs him. He calls his village using a borrowed phone, shouting, "They press the gold." The gold. The entire village celebrates. Kids dance in the streets. The local church rings its bells. As the episode airs worldwide, millions watch Mang Lito's story. News channels across the globe feature him. People send letters, donations, and love. One message reads, "I lost my father last year. Hearing you sing made me believe he's still watching over me. Thank you." During the semifinals, Mang Lito performs again, this time singing an original song he wrote decades ago called "Home Again." The lyrics talk about soldiers returning from war, about the pain of losing loved ones, and the comfort of faith. The crowd listens in absolute silence. When he finishes, everyone stands again, chanting his name. Simon tells him, "Mang Lito, there are singers who perform songs, and there are singers who make us feel them. You, sir, make us feel." As the competition continues, people from all over the world vote for him. Even celebrities share his clips, saying how his humility and voice brought them to tears. He doesn't have fancy clothes, doesn't use big gestures, just his voice and heart. One night, before the grand finale, he sits alone in his small hotel room, looking at his wife's picture. "Rosa," he whispers, "I wish you could see this. I'm not scared anymore. I'll sing for you one last time." The next day, the finale stage is packed. The lights are dazzling, the crowd enormous. He stands under the spotlight, holding his old guitar. Before singing, he says softly, "This song is for everyone who ever felt forgotten. You are not alone." He begins to sing a Filipino-English medley, a heartfelt mix of "Anak" and "Bridge Over Troubled Water." The combination of his native language and the universal lyrics touches something deep inside everyone present. People in the audience sob openly. Even Simon's voice cracks when he says afterward, "You are the heart of this show. You are what humanity is about." He doesn't win the title. But in the end, he wins something far greater, the world's love. After the finale, hundreds of interviews, sponsorships, and donations pour in. He tells everyone, "The money will go to rebuild homes in my village." And he keeps his word. When he returns to Cebu, thousands welcome him at the pier. Children run toward him, waving small flags. Old friends embrace him tightly. The church choir sings as he steps off the boat. Reporters crowd around, asking what he plans to do next. He smiles and says, "I'm going to teach music to children, for free." He starts a small school under a mango tree, using donated instruments. Kids come from nearby villages to learn. Sometimes, he sings with them at sunset, their voices rising together in harmony. He tells them stories about kindness, courage, and never giving up on dreams, no matter how old you are. Months later, AGT invites him back as a guest performer. This time, he walks on stage with 3 of his students, barefoot, shy, and smiling. They perform a soulful version of "What a Wonderful World." The moment their voices blend with his, the crowd once again stands in awe. Simon, overwhelmed, wipes his eyes and says, "You didn't just bring music, you brought hope." After the performance, Simon embraces him. Mang Lito, he says softly, you remind us that true talent isn't about fame. It's about touching hearts. Back in Cebu, Mang Lito's story becomes legend. Schools name music programs after him. His small hut by the sea is repaired and turned into a community center. On quiet nights, he still sits by the shore, strumming his old guitar. Sometimes he looks at the stars and whispers, "Thank you, Lord. I made her proud." One evening, a young boy from his village asks him, "Mang Lito, were you scared when you sang in front of Simon Cowell?" He chuckles softly, "Oh, I was terrified. But then I remembered, I wasn't singing for them. I was singing for love." That's the legacy he leaves behind. Not the fame, not the applause, but the message that even in the poorest corners of the world, a voice full of truth can move mountains. Years later, when Mang Lito passes peacefully in his sleep, the world mourns. AGT airs a tribute featuring clips of his performances. Simon Cowell, visibly emotional, says, he was more than a contestant. He was a reminder that the human spirit is unbreakable. His students continue his music school, calling it, the Lito Foundation. Every year, they hold a small concert by the beach where he once sang. The children perform his songs, their voices echoing across the water. And somewhere, beyond the horizon, you can almost imagine his voice joining theirs, calm, strong, eternal. And that's the story of Mang Lito, a man who had nothing but a heart full of songs, who turned pain into poetry, and who taught the world that no dream is too late, and no soul is too small to shine. If this story touched your heart, remember to share it, because somewhere out there, someone just like Mang Lito is still waiting to be heard.